hunters, from Altai Mountains to Caspian Sea, spreads our motherland, Kazakhstan. Adapting to living in miscellaneous landscapes, the ancestors of Kazakhs had been creating unique culture, mythology, and art closely related to the motherland nature. Each episode of the program, constantly operating tele-expedition The Legend Hunters, takes you to one of the most legendary places of our country. Along with our film crew, you will learn ancient myths and get a foretaste of touristic Kazakhstan's modern capabilities. The Legend Hunters continue their western trip. The Aral Sea and the Ustur Plateau, with their inimitable history and powerful energy, are left behind. The expedition approaches one of the main pearls of Kazakhstan, the Caspian Sea. The eastern coast of the Caspian Sea has been an intersection node of naval and terrestrial routes since high antiquity. The Caspian Sea is mentioned in ancient chronicles under various names. The Greeks and the Romans called it the Kirkan Sea, the Assyrians the Eastern Sea, the Arabs the Jordan Sea. The Persian geographers left some detailed depictions of the Gurzem Sea. In Rus, the Caspian Sea was called the Khvalin Sea, and the Tatars named it Agdengiz, that is translated as the White Sea. The etymology of the contemporary hydronym dates back to the people of horse breeders, the Caspians, that are now extinct. Heavy growth of international trade in the 16th century promoted coastwise navigation development by the eastern coast of the Caspian Sea. The northeastern part of the sea belonging to Kazakhstan is shallow. Creeks and bays show during the periods of transgression and turn into salt marshes unsuitable for shipping. This peculiarity forms a uniquely beautiful landscape, but causes big economic problem. But the Tub-Karagan Peninsula is another pair of shoes. Its dry rocky shores and convenient bays are perfect for sea harbors development. Favorable geographic location of the peninsula made it a Kazakhstani Venetia, the largest Central Asian logistics center of ancient time. The Legend Hunters tele-expedition would perform an auto-run along the whole peninsula coastline. The group of 4 cars goes deeper into the Aktau Mountains. The massif consists of 2 ridges with flat tops and steep slopes, the North and the South Aktau. The length of the massif is 70 kilometers and the breadth is 12 kilometers. The rocks of the Aktau, marls and limestone, are handy to process. This is a great construction material that was used in ancient time and is being used nowadays. Sedimentary strata that shapes the ridge began to form in the bottom sediments of the Tethys Ocean back in prehistory, around 140 million years ago. In that misty faraway time, continents had been drifting, oceans and seas had been changing their outlines, mountains had been collapsing and turning into plains, and the former sea bottom had been becoming mountain. As a result of that processes, about 10 million years ago, only a fragment of the giant sea that stretched from the Aral Sea to the Caucasus left. The geologists named it the Sarmat Sea, and the contemporary Aktau Mountains were one of its aquatorium's islands. In historical terms, the Sarmat Sea has receded not long ago, 300,000–500,000 years, leaving contemporary relicts, that is the Caspian Sea and the Aral Sea. And this is the first interesting find, a petrified ammonite in a good state of preservation. Ammonites are extinct squids. They remind of the Argolis horns by their bizarre form, and have been named ammonites in honor of ancient Egyptian god Ammon, depicted with ram horns. By the way, The Latin nomenclature of an argali species, Avissamon, also contains the name of the Egyptian god. The expedition turns to the northeast and moves towards the seashore. The drivers can easily maintain the speed of 70 km per hour, as the limestone clay Tubkargan plateau is plain. But suddenly they slam on the brakes as a steep precipice appeared before them. This is the Jergalgan depression. Jergalgan is translated from the Turkic language as fallen ground. And in fact, it seems like a giant layer of crust literally has fallen into the abyss. The ufologists are sure that a spaceship landed at this very place in ancient time, but the scientists had their own point of view. They believe that due to the fact that rocks were washed away by the underground waters, some cavities and caves formed under the solid limestone shell of the Tubkargan plateau, and that led to collapse. Judging by the vegetation and the soil characteristics on the bottom of the depression, the 400 km piece of the Tubkargan slab collapsed relatively while ago, in historical time. It is possible that this could have happened during a powerful earthquake. At the time of another transgression of the Caspian Sea, the depression was awash and the water completed the process initiated by tectonic activity. Light rocks like sand and clay were washed away by the tidal bore and only piles of collapsed rocks remained. The scientists found petrified prints of tropical animals on some of the fragments. Probably the climate of the former Sarmat Sea Islands was warm and damp. The travelers set the next camp on the seashore. The coastal environment is made up of hills, hovers, and rocks. In the beginning of the spring, the water is still rather cold, but the most desperate legend hunters decide to dip into it. There is still much time till beach season, but when you manage to combine rest with cognition of nature, history, and culture, the expedition turns to a holiday. The coastline of the Mangashla Creek around the Jergalgan Cape is steep, and the coastal waters are rather deep for the fishing boats. The relief of the Tubkargan Peninsula is favorable for navigation, and it was first described by a delegate of Queen Mary I of England, Anthony Jenkinson. Enlisting Ivan the Terrible's support, English diplomat traveled to Bukhara in 1558-1560. From the European part of the continent, he arrived on the Tubkargan Peninsula by a sailing rowboat. Then, with a caravan of 700 camels, he reached Bukhara through the Ustyurt Plateau. Jenkinson was the first West European researcher who depicted Central Asia and the coastline of the Caspian Sea. Not only the official reports for Her Majesty were the result of his journey, but also the most detailed map of Russia, the Caspian Sea, and Central Asia of that time. Published in London in 1562 under the title of Description of Muscovy, Russia, and Tartaria, it shed light on almost inaccessible regions situated in the very heart of Eurasia. Jenkinson's map was very interesting for the Europeans. No wonder a large number of copies had been sold. But more than 100 years before the English researcher, Afanasy Nikitin depicted the eastern coast of the Caspian Sea in his book Journey Beyond Three Seas. In 1466, the merchant from Tver joined a sea convoy of Shirvan Khanate's ambassador with his 2 ships. During a storm, one of Nikitin's ships was thrown up on the eastern shore. The whole crew fell prisoners to the Turkmens, and the goods were plundered. But Nikitin reached Shirvan, that was situated in the territory of modern Azerbaijan, and from Baku negotiated with the Turkmens for ransom of his ship crew. A token trade route of that time, called from Khiva to Rus, ran across the Caspian Sea and functioned for almost 400 years. The most important logistic post of the route was the Tubkargan Cape. Overland transport, that is desert ships, camels, went from here to Khiva, and the maritime, that is sailing boats, to the Volga outfall. In 1716, the Tubkargan fortress was built here by Peter the Great's order and named after him. Meanwhile, the expedition approached the Bagarji Cape, the northernmost of the peninsula. In 4 kilometers from the cape, there is the Joly spring in the gorge. Its name is translated as Mary Dripping, a reedy lake formed around this natural creation. Crucian carps are found here. The lake is surrounded by an oasis of poplars, willows and blackberries. And in 100 of meters from the spring, you can easily find the famous Whaling Cliff. A vertical rock platform hangs over the narrow gorge. Cool water oozes out through the holes in the rocks and gathers on the slabs of marl. To take a rest in the shady oasis with cool vapor-rich air to drumming of the dripping must have been paradisiacal for the travelers tired of the desert heat. There is a legend connected with the spring. A beautiful woman, Meret, was a wife of a rich Turkmenian Khan. When the old husband died and they built a high kuba in his honor, the burden of responsibility for his family had been put on Meret's fragile shoulders. It was a hot and dry summer on the peninsula. That created a water deficit. And then Meret decided to do her best to find water. She found the needed masters and promised to generously pay them if they hack a pass through a cliff so water could flow through it. Rich relatives of the Khan were indignant and did not think it wise to use personal funds for public. But the single-minded woman achieved her goal. The Joly spring gave water to the people and the animals. Thanks to kumis and shubat, men and women regained strength and endurance they once had.
Имя красавицы Мерет осталось навеки в сердцах местных жителей.
On the ridge slope, near the Argolis paths, you can find old marl slab masonries. These are hides and bushes. The ancient people of the Tub-Karagan used them to hunt for the Trans-Caspian Ural. Kulans, goitrid gazelles and saigas also inhabited the peninsula. Nowadays, you can meet only the Argolis, but the plan of Kulans' resettlement from the Altyn Yemel National Park to the Aktau Mountains is being developed. The expedition passes by the ruins of the abandoned Karagan fishing village and heads for Fort Shevchenko. This small military-based town, founded in 1846, would not have probably been that notable if it was not for the fact that between 1850 and 1857, the great Ukrainian poet, prosaic, and artist Taras Shevchenko had been doing military service. His drawings from the Caspian series had long been the only illustrations of the eastern Caspian Sea for the books. The Goluboy Zaliv Bay also attracts interest. Steep rocky shore frames the picturesque harbor. A cormorant colony inhabits the cliffs. Crystal clear waters of the Goluboy Zaliv attract the underwater hunters from Aktau. There is a lot of fish here, and particularly valuable trophy is the gray mullet. It is notable that the gray mullets have been brought to the Caspian Sea from the Black Sea and successfully got accustomed to the new water. The next day morning, the expedition heads to the next point. The crystal-clear Goluboy Zaliv is left behind, and the cars are sprightly count the kilometers they covered on the new highway recently put in commission. The expedition enters Aktau city, the oblast center of the Mangistau region. This is a very young city, founded in 1963. It was known as Shevchenko until 1991. Defense industry and Ministry of Medium Machine Building were the economic base of Aktau. A unique complex that included uranium ore production, processing and on-site beneficiation enterprises was created. Nowadays, Aktau is the center of oil and gas deposits development on the Caspian Shelf. The legend hunters decide to stay for a while and take a rest in this wonderful maritime city to continue the search for the beautiful with renewed strength.